All right, looks like we're getting ready to go. Everybody had a good weekend. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes for everybody to pop in. But while we do, hi, I'm James, and welcome back to M365 Main. This has been a pretty interesting conference so far. Been seeing stuff from people all over the place and some great content. So what we'll just wait another minute or so for people to filter in. While we do, we'll just quickly jump into About Me. No one really wants to know who I am, but let's go into it a little bit anyway. Today we're going to be talking about building code for, building a bot for Teams, and without using a bit of code. And the big thing about this is I'm not a code cutter. I'm a Skype for Business admin from days back. I don't know much about coding. So this sort of session is great for IT pros and people like you or me who we don't have Visual Studio installed, or we don't understand .NET and those sorts of things. So, but yeah, I've been a community speaker at user groups and other bits and pieces, been contributing to the Skype community for a while. Now Teams is here, so we're all talking about that. But the big takeaway from this is obviously I'm not a code cutter. I'm the same as you, and we'll move through that. Anyway, oh, and yes, I am recently was awarded a Microsoft MVP for my contributions to the community. All right, so I do want to take a quick minute to just acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands. So if you're not from Australia or you're not up with events, you may not know that English speakers are pretty new in Australia. We've only been here a couple of hundred years, and we did take these lands from their traditional owners. So we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the custodians of this online conference, as it's being hosted in Australia with mainly Australian attendance. Also, shout out to my New Zealand friends over there, similar sort of situation. Actually, our moderator today is a Kiwi. So we would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. In saying that, this is an online conference, and as with all conferences, we expect people to behave like adults. So on screen now, we have a code of conduct. That code of conduct in its very simple form is we expect you all to behave and treat people as you would treat yourself. We won't tolerate any discrimination due to gender, identity expression, sexual orientation, disability, age, appearance, anything like that. We're all mature people. We can all learn to get along. If you need the long version of that, you can see the link down below. We also don't tolerate any harassment to any other members or any of our staff. Again, we're an online community. We're all about being open and helping each other. That's the point of stuff like this. We wouldn't have fantastic events like this if we couldn't all be trusted to be together. So, moving on, hopefully everybody's here now. Building a bot without code. Why in blazes would we do it? The long and short of it is because it makes life easier. So we can use Azure Cognitive Services to perform repetitive lookup tasks for us. So how many times have you done something like where you've asked your favorite search engine, what time does this close? What's the carrying weight of an unladen, what's the velocity of an unladen swallow or something like that? And that appropriate search engine has come back with an answer instead of just a web page. That search engine, or that cognitive service as it's known, uses human language understanding to understand what your query is and try to give you an answer. So the idea is that we can use those cognitive services in Azure to pull that content from a data store that you have that's for your business or for your community event, and feed that to your users. So for example, if you've got an FAQ or a how-to document on how to use a particular appliance, Microsoft has a great demo where they use the manual that comes with the Surface. And you can ask a bot, how do I factory reset my Surface? And straight away, that bot will respond saying, hold these buttons and hold your tongue at the right angle. You could pull information from your corporate wiki or a SharePoint or your internal knowledge bases. When's my new Windows 10 laptop getting here? And once again, that cognitive service can go look at that pure human information you've written, it's not in a special format, and go and send that to the user and says, there are migrations occurring on this date, this date, this date. The idea is to give a very simple to interact with knowledge rather than just saying it's on SharePoint, go find it. So how do we do that? Now, it's a very simple question, and it's really it's not that hard. We create a knowledge base, as it's called, in a service called QAmaker.ai. So this is a free service from Microsoft that uses Azure Cognitive Services to understand plain human data and transform it into something that an AI can use to feed a bot, that bot can then respond. Once we've done that, we create an app service in Azure. That app service allows us to run bots in our Azure tenant. Once again, that's another free service, so we can do all of this that I'm talking about for free. So feel free to follow along when I do get to it later. We link QAmaker and Azure together, so there used to be a lot more complicated. Microsoft have made that a lot simpler now. And then we want to put that into Teams, so we link that Azure app service and Teams together, so that way then Teams can talk to that app service and your users can interact with it in a simplistic format. We're going to quickly break into some of the technical bits about it. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because honestly, it's boring and you don't really need to dive too much into it. So in here, we have the Microsoft bot framework. So that bot framework is things like human language understanding service, the interaction and connections to all the services up here, like Skype for Business. Teams is on this stack, even though they've got an S word here. You know, and then we can get that data from the QAmaker. So we can grab that data from FAQs we have written today, manuals, documentations. You literally grab a Word document that's a manual and stuff this into QAmaker, and we'll pump that into the bot framework for you. The Azure Web App Bot Service is the app service that lets our bot run and push out to our endpoint. So it's the point that the application or that code that says take this command and spit this out runs at. So the slide we were talking about before is the cognitive services, where it takes that data and creates commands. This is where we grab the command and then send it out to the user via whatever bot platform. So you may have used a service back in the day, if you're old fart like me, IRC, where we used to have bots on IRC. You'd type a command, like start with an exclamation point, and it would answer. And AppBot does the same thing, but we're running it in the cloud, not on some machine I've got sitting in my garage or in a server in a rack, so we don't need to worry about it. So that's about it for the how-to. Now we're just going to quickly pray to the demo gods and make sure that this works, because it's time for a demo. I'm going to build this for you live on stage, I suppose. Now, as we do this, there will be a couple of bits where Azure sits there and spins its wheels while it's building things. None of this is pre-canned, with the exclusion of my data source, and that we'll speak about when we come to. So this is completely live. If it doesn't work, you're going to come along with me and troubleshoot, but it'll be totally fine. So we're going to start up here at QAmaker.ai. So QAmaker AI, as I said, is a service that takes that human data and then allows me to build bots like this. When are you open? Do you have vegetarian options? And then link those into my Azure bot. It's very simple and very easy to use. Again, like I said, everything that we're doing today can be done for free. So to the point, I'm actually going to be using my MSA account, so my free Microsoft account, not my Office 365 account. I will say that I do have some Azure credits, but again, you can follow along, sign up for your free Azure trial. If you do create anything that costs money, it's fine. Your Azure trial will cover that for a certain period of time. And then once that trial finishes, your Azure trial will just turn those services off. So you can turn them back to free and turn them back on. But we'll be using all the free settings in here today. So What we do is we log into Q&A Maker. We can see that I'm already logged in using my MSA account. So I'm just going to click on Create Knowledge Base up the top here, or Create a Knowledge Base, and click on that. And the first thing it's going to turn around to do is tell me that I need to create a Q&A service in Microsoft Azure. And that's, once again, pretty easy. If you've got an Azure account, it takes you straight to it. I'm already logged into mine, but if you don't, it'll even take you through the steps of setting it up. So we're just going to click on Create a Q&A Service. It's going to spin its little wheels. I hope everybody's enjoying this so far. As we can see, Azure's starting to load up now. And if you've ever created a service in Azure before, this is a very normal look. You can see I've got some Azure credit in my system right now, but I can assure you it won't go down from any of this stuff that we're doing today. So we're going to create a name for our Q&A maker, as you can see up here in Azure. So we'll give it a name, M365bot. And then we select our subscription. In my case, I have a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. If you're doing it for free, you would see a Azure trial subscription. Again, so you can pick from that. We then select our pricing tier. In this case, I'm going to select F0. F0 is a free pricing tier, but it limits me to 3 documents or 3 data sources for that content. So that way, if I want more of that functionality, then I would have to step up to a $10 a month plan. Resource group, this is, for those that haven't used Azure before, this is a way of separating your resources into pricing groups and strategies. Not something I'm going to cover here, but you can just create a new one. So we click on Create New, M365bot. Okay, you can see we've got new M365bot. We're going to pick where it's located. Now, typically for free services like this, I try and create them in the States. If you don't need a service to be created in Australia, it's usually cheaper to make it in America. Little pro tip for Azure stuff. Again, it's going to ask us about Azure Search. We're just going to make sure we pick free. Anything that starts with F is free. We've got our Azure Search location and our app name. We need to make sure that that app name is available. So you can see m365bot.azurewebsites.net. So whatever I put in here must be a globally unique name, not just unique to your tenant. It's got to be everywhere. The website location and the app diagnostic insights. We're going to turn the app insights off because they cost us money because Azure has to store that data somewhere. So we'll click on Create. And you'll see it's validating our settings down here. Once that validation's done, it'll move to deployment. So if we take a quick look up here, we can see that the deployment's been submitted. We can click here for a bit more information and the deployment is in progress. So if we click on that, we can see that Azure is going through and deploying all the services that it needs. So the server farm, search services, those sorts of bits and pieces. We just wait for that, it'll spin its wheels and get everything done. At the moment it says your deployment's underway. Almost there, and you can see our deployment is now complete. So we can go to that resource if we want. So if we head back to Q&A Maker, you can see at the moment that we don't have a Q&A service to link our knowledge base to. It's a very simple case of just clicking on refresh, and then that content it'll go and pull that content from Azure again. So we'll click on refresh, wait for that to spin. You can see it's pulling my data from Azure now. And it's going to ask me to pick from my tenants. So I'm going to pick my free tenant, my subscription, the Q&A service that we just created. And we've run into a small issue here. We did test this last night. We just refreshed this whole page. This is going to be rather embarrassing if it doesn't work now. I've built this on stage 4 times now and I've not run into too big an issue. There we go, now we can pick it. We just had to refresh the whole page. And then we're going to tell it that it's an English bot. Easy. So then we have to give our knowledge base a name. Now, obviously, this is my bot, and everybody knows that I'm a little bit of a brony. So let's call this bot Luna is the best pony. Regardless, you can name it whatever you like. It's not going to be seen by anything anyway. Then the important part is we're going to start populating our knowledge base. So Q&A Maker is going to extract this data from a TSV, PDF, doc, Excel spreadsheet, as long as it's a logically formed data source. And by logically formed data source, we mean it has a heading and then content, and a heading and then content. Q&A Maker does a really good job of trying to understand this by itself. As I said, if it's a structured document, you can usually feed it to it. Wiki pages, all that sort of stuff. I actually used to use a free online wiki to demo this. That had a list of all the ponies in My Little Pony. Like I said, I'm a brony. And it worked really well until they changed their advertising code, and it couldn't scrape the data anymore. But it can be any structured data. You can feed it to a fan wiki, your company portal, just as long as it's structured data. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to feed it some data. Over here on my website, I've got just a quick list of data. As you can see, there's nothing special about this page at all. It's just a normal FAQ page where we have a title, and then we have headings. So we have a heading here, picture, content, a heading, picture, content. So Q&A Maker will go and take that data and make sense of it. You can see that content also has links in it, formatting, and obviously the pictures. Now, this is stuff I've just taken straight from that wiki I was talking about before. I've literally cut and pasted, I've not done anything special. This data source took me about 5 minutes to make in WordPress. The only thing is, if it's a web page, it needs to be publicly accessible. So if it's a SharePoint, for example, it needs to be public so that the Q&A Maker can access it. If you can't make it public, save an offline copy of that document and push it into Q&A Maker. We're just going to grab this URL for now and stick it into Q&A Maker. Now, as you may remember, I said before that we're limited to 3 data sources. We're limited to 3 because we're using the free tier. So I can give it another web page as well, but I also give it a chit-chat file. That's considered a data source. So a chit-chat file does things like, I'm sure if you've spoken to your favorite assistant and you ask it things like, are you human? And it turns around and gives you something witty, or what's your favorite color? Those are things that are contained in your chit-chat file. So for example, if I say that I want witty, I could ask if you're tired, and it would say, well, I'm not going to sing you a lullaby, those sorts of things. So once we've done that, we're going to click on Create Your KB. It's going to sit there and read my data source now and create question and answer pairs. It's going to take a little while. So while we do that, I'm just going to have a quick look at the questions. So Anonymous asks, does each bot need an app service for one? Does each bot need an app service for once the app service is enabled, or does that all work for one bot, for all bots? Unfortunately, I can't answer that with any confidence. I've not built more than one bot, but I believe you can use one app service. The tricky bit is going to be when you're trying to publish it. I couldn't really say with any confidence on that. I'm sorry. Cario asks, do you have experience or thoughts using MS products on a non-MS SharePoint intranet? We have a client that has an intranet built on another platform. They also have Teams, Exchange. They'd like to benefit greatly from a number of bots. Could they use MS products for this? If so, how would it work? So as you saw, I've pulled that data now from my WordPress site. WordPress is an automatic product. It's just a web page. Q&A Maker goes and makes sense of that regardless. It doesn't need to be SharePoint. In regards to feeding that to another service, we'll come to that a little bit later in the session, but I can connect this bot to Facebook. I can connect it to Slack. I can connect it to Teams. I can connect it to Skype for Consumer. There's tons of services that this bolts into, and I'll show you those when we get to that section. Cool. So you can see that Q&A Maker has come back with something, and it's probably a little bit confusing right now, but realistically, it's question and answer pairs. So these question and answer pairs are when I ask something from the bot, what should it return? So it's used human understanding to grab the data from the data source and try and grab what it feels is appropriate data based on the heading. So you can see here the context is Luna list of ponies. So I've had that heading where it said list of ponies and then a subheading that said Luna list of ponies, right? And I can add alternative phrasing if I want to tweak this and that sort of stuff. But if anyone mentions anything about Luna, it's going to then return this. And you can see that it's grabbed that content that I had and has correctly formatted it using Markdown. So for those that aren't aware, Markdown is a very simple way of formatting. It's very popular on GitHub and services such as that, where you can put in formatting in plain text. And so the idea is that in this Markdown, whatever service that I'm sending it to, as long as it supports Markdown, and a lot do, then this content will come across. So we'll talk about Luna. You can see it's injected an image and a link to the image, which is online, and then starts talking about the content that it found in that page here. So now that we've generated that bot, how about we test it? Move a bit because my mic's in the way. So if I click on test up here, I get a very basic chat window. Now, to be clear, this bot is not live. I'm just testing it using the Q&A Maker service right now. So then I can say something like, who is Luna? Press enter. And once again, it'll think about it for a second. And it's grabbed that content from the web page that I've done or the question and answer pairs, and it's appropriately responded in the chat window with the images. And this test doesn't have any formatting, but when you go to Teams, it will have formatting. And you can see it's not just doing a search for that. It's using the human language understanding to understand the keyword there was Luna. Who is, I'm asking about a particular thing, Luna. So it searched my question answer pairs for Luna, found that, and given me the appropriate response. So what if I want to do something like adding my own custom commands? So talking back on those things where in days of old we had we used to have IRC bots, or you've probably seen Slack or Discord bots or something where you type something and they do a particular action. Well, we can do that too. So if I want, I can add a Q&A pair by clicking on Add Q&A Pair here, and a question. In this case, I'm going to make it a command. So I'm just going to type the word boop. For those that don't know, a boop is when you boop someone on the nose. And in the answer field, I'm just going to post my own custom content. Just going to cut and paste from off screen. And you can see I'm using that markdown again. So exclamation mark, boop, that's the name of the image, and then a link to that image. I'll save and train with that now. Again, Azure will take that data and train from that. We'll give that a second. Good to see that that worked out for you, Cario, by the way. And we'll click on test again. And now you can see that we still have the content from before, but I can also use the command and I will get an appropriate response using that specific custom code that I used. I mean, awesome, great. It works as we expect it to, right? So let's actually go and take this bot and do something useful with it. Let's click on publish up here. We'll get rid of this test window. And you can just see publishing your knowledge base moves it from the test index. So this is in Q&A's Azure tenant into the production instance. So once we publish it, the app becomes available, the URL becomes available. I can connect to it with services. And this knowledge base will be published to the M365 bot Q&A Maker service. So I'll click on publish. That will go and connect it to my services in Azure. Shouldn't take too long. There we go. So our service has been deployed. Now we need to connect it to a bot in Azure. So we've got our app service. Our app service is running the human language understanding, the Q&A maker pairs, the cognitive part behind inputting that data. Now we need to create the bot, the actual cognitive part that interacts with the user. Now this used to be really hard and complicated in SDK version 3. Microsoft just published version 4. They did this literally 2 days before I did a presentation once, and it didn't go down too well. So we hit create bot. We used to have to grab a whole bunch of specific code down here to make it work. Now you don't need to touch a single line of code. If we click on create bot, and you can see it takes us back into Azure. Wait for that to load up. Believe it or not, I do have relatively quick internet here. So you can see we have a service. So anyone that's created apps in Azure before will see on the left-hand side, it's as normal and as usual by default, it's trying to charge us money. We have a bot handle of M365 bot. Well, let's change that because that's going to be the name that we're going to show users. Azure's just going to quickly check. You can see that spinning box. That bot IDs, I've used it before. There we go. And you can see I've got a tick. The subscription I'm going to tie it to, again, using my Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, it will work with the free tiers. I've done it. We're going to add it into the 365 bot resource group. This allows me to delete the whole resource group when I'm done and it won't consume any space. Location we leave as is. F0 for free. The app name is Ponybot again. We don't need to change anything about the SDK language or the OAuth key. This has all been filled in automatically by Q&A Maker. We're going to turn the app insights off again. I don't want to be charged for their storage. And the app ID and password leave alone. We'll just let it create by itself and click on create. Again, we'll see that it's validating, thinking about it. Come on, Azure. This is the problem with doing things live. I did make my sacrifice to the demo gods last night. If anyone was following me on Twitter, they would have seen that. Actually, a funny story, there is a guy that runs the demo gods Twitter who seems to comment on every demo god hashtag. So you can see we've got the deployment in progress. Again, we can click on it just to see how it's going. Our deployment is running. While we do that, we'll take this opportunity to quickly kick off our competitions code. So for those who have been following M365, we've been giving away some sweet, precious loot over the period. So pull out your phone and give that QR code a quick scan. I don't know how it's done on iPhone these days, but on Android nowadays, you can swipe down from the top and tap Q&R. It'll open your camera. Give that a scan, fill in the form. That form will give you some loot. I tried to fill it in last night. Apparently I'm not eligible, damn. So I imagine there's some cool stuff. We've got some cool sponsors, so there should be some good loot in there. Cool, all right. That should be done now. As we can see, our deployment's complete. I will bring that QR code back up a little bit later if you missed it. All right, so that's made. We can go to the resource here in Azure. And you'll see it's trying to get me started on building my bot and getting that integrated into services. But realistically, I don't need to. It's already been built by Q&A Maker. So if I go down to here on the left-hand side and click on channels, you'll see that I have the ability to, once it loads, come on. Hey, you'll see by default that we have web chat, right? So that lets me chat with the bot here. If I click on test in web chat, again, it's the same as before when we were testing it. It goes through a quick authorization process through Azure AD, but we still have the, oops, wrong command. We still have the same commands where I can say boop and it will send back the right content. Who is Twilight? And it still gives that contextual stuff. But I mean, that's not very useful. We don't want users to log into our Azure tenant and fiddle with our stuff. So we use the channels function here to bolt it into other services. So we can bolt this into Cortana, not that I've ever done that, Teams, so we'll come back to that later. On Carrio's question, we can interact with email, Facebook, Slack, Skype, Kik. Kik's a platform I know for other sorts of services, not really bots. Telegram, same sort of thing, and Twilio. So we can integrate this into a lot of services. But the one we're talking about today is Teams, and it's so easy to do. We click on Teams, and it'll ask us to configure it for Teams. So in the messaging panel, we're just going to quickly leave it as Teams commercial. You would know if you're a government tenant, if you need government compliance or you don't get features forever, then you're a government tenant, but 99.9% of people are going to be using commercial, so leave it as commercial. On the calling panel, this enable calling function lets our bot take calling data. Now, I'm not going to cover that here, that's completely other kettle of fish. You have to have a service that'll then take that that call, pass it to a text-to-speech engine, then pass that text-to-speech back to the bot. The bot then passes back to your service. Your service then does text-to-speech or speech-to-text the other way around, and then feeds that back. It's not covered under this, and it would be a different app. So if you enable that calling, this is where you would send the webhook for your service, so where that audio stream will go for your bot to deal with. We're not doing that, completely moot point here. Then we go to the Publish tab. So when we get to the Publish tab, it lets us try and publish it using our tenants team app catalog. Now, not something I'm going to go into today, but it's really not that hard. You can create an app, publish it into your Office 365 tenant, and then you can either set a policy that says everybody gets this bot, which means it's a contact, or you can have it down on the left rail, or you can have people just be there by default so that they can discover it. Regardless, there is a link, it takes you through, it's not that hard. It does need an app called Teams App Studio, which comes with Teams. It's not hard to enable. We're not going to use that today. Or we can publish it into the Teams App Store. So if you've ever been to Teams yourself and you've gone discovering for apps and you've found things like Telegram, not Telegram, any of the planning services or any of the other cool bots, they're all published in the Teams App Store, and you've probably disabled all the things that users go and fiddle with. So we'll click on Save here. We just have to acknowledge the terms and conditions. So click on Agree. Ooh, that's the first time I've seen that. We got an error. 401. What? Let's try that again. Maybe I took too long. So we're going to click on Teams. Ooh, I've broken it. Let's just reload that page. Okay, so we've got our resource here. This is the joys of doing things live. We'll click on Teams again. On commercial, we're not using calling, and publish. This is going to be really embarrassing. Got it. See, with most things in Azure, if it doesn't work, refresh the page. Okay, so there is sort of a little UI bug here because they're not expecting you to connect to Teams in the traditional way, the way that we're going to. They're expecting you to publish the app. So there's no way for us to actually connect this right now. The simplest way, click on something else and click on channels again. It's a UI bug that's been in Azure for a little while. And you'll see now that in the connect to channels, I've got Microsoft Teams as a service, and it's a hyperlink. If I copy that link, that is a link that will launch Teams and kick off a conversation with the bot. So you can put that link on your website. You can put that link into a page that you've got published in your Teams wiki or in your OneNote, or as a web page that you've published in Teams. Regardless, it's fairly simple to do. So we'll just click on this now. Click on Teams, and you can see it kicks off the Teams app launcher. Edgium is trying to protect me here and is asking, do you want to open Teams? I go, yes. And I'll bring my Teams over. You can see that I'm now having a conversation in chat with PonyBot. So it's got the bot icon, and if I hover over it, you can send and receive instant messages. And I just ask it the question, who is the best pony? I may not get this. Give it a second. Hello? Rainbow Dash is the best. No, Luna is the best pony. So obviously I've asked it a very broad open question. I haven't defined very well in my data set that Luna is the best pony. So if I went back and worked on my question answer pairs, I could add an alternative phrasing for Luna to say that associate her with best pony. In this case, Q&A Maker has associated that because it's found relevant context in the data. So I could ask, who is Twilight? And I get the relevant content. Again, who is Luna? And I get all that data. Very easy, very simple, and I can chat with it. I can send that link to other people, and it just works. If I wanted to publish that, I would go back to, in the app stores, I would go back to the relevant pages in Azure and look at the publishing details on how to get it into my tenant or into the global app store. There is a certificate requirement. It does need to be hosted in with HTTPS. Azure looks after a lot of that for you. So it is fairly simple, but again, outside the scope of this. So that pretty much brings that to an end. You can see we went from start to finish live. We had issues, but it was always very simple to solve. And not once did I open Visual Studio, PowerShell, the command line, or touch a single droplet of code. Very simple, very easy to use. So I do have a guide up on my website, which I will link to shortly, where you can follow along yourself. It is, as I said, all free. So you can play along to your heart's content, won't cost you a dime. And then once you've proven to your boss that Luna is in fact the best pony, you can go and put some real content behind it. So let's bring up that QR code again and get rid of those subtitles. Once again, like I said before, if you didn't get a chance to scan that QR code, quickly pull your phones out, give it a quick scan, make sure that you fill in that form. It helps the M365 team. We get feedback. We get to make this better for next time. I'd like to give a quick shout out to the whole M365 May team. So the Strants, Rebecca, Daryl, all our moderators and all our staff. This has been a pretty cool conference so far. They even let us bring our user group into it. So they've been really open and welcoming. So thank you to that. I will also have a quick shout out to our sponsors. Of course, as with everything that's online these days, it's Raid Shadow Legends. No, not really. Our real sponsors regarding 365, Swoop, Avapoint, Varlo, Logitech make some great gear for teams if you're into that. Poly, I'm speaking to you on some Poly gear now. Exclaimer, if you haven't seen it before, they do stuff for email signatures. One place I'm not 100% across. Live Tiles, I actually caught up with these guys at Ignite a couple of years ago and took this ridiculous photo. And now Powell Software, kudos. Of course, Microsoft for making these sorts of apps and making them free so that we can all learn and fiddle and play when we've got time. And Plenum, they make cool little devices like this, status light, which I've turned off because it was bright red, letting people, great for working from home at the moment, letting people know if you're busy or if you can talk. So great little devices there. And that's pretty much it. As I said, a full how-to is over on UcMadScientist.com. So if you head over there, there's step-by-step instructions that you can follow along and go from there. I'm just going to quickly bring Teams back up so I can see if the questions are there. Excuse me. Getting back to the questions could be interesting. There we go. See, I know what I'm doing. I'm a Teams certified MVP. Okay, and published questions. Who is the best pony? Let's see. Daryl. Yes, Daryl's pointing out there is cool loot from moderators. Again, I will bring that code up if you're looking for loot. how to take shots on iPhone, open camera and take a picture. Awesome, that's pretty cool. Thanks, Cario. How exact does the question have to be? Well, the question doesn't have to be that exact. So if we look at my Q&A maker, we can see that it was actually pretty broad. So we'll go to my knowledge bases here and wait for that to load. Is refresh the page equivalent of reboot your Azure? No, I think rebooting your Azure would involve closing and reopening your browser window. But oh yeah, okay. So if we click on our knowledge bases, you can see that in my question, the question here is Lunar list of ponies. That wasn't obviously the question that we used. We just mentioned Lunar and human interactive services, human language understanding, sorry, then took that and understood that I was talking about Lunar, and it went through the question lists and saw that Lunar was in there. It then does a confidence score match against that. So now that I've got that, we'll just bring up the test window again. And I can say Lunar. Who is Lunar? So I want to do, it's behind my microphone. I can also debug this and it will show me its confidence score. So I've got to remember where that is now, excuse me. There we go. So the question, it asked who the question that I was, who is Lunar, and then it gave a confidence score on the answer. It also gave some other answers it thought might be appropriate for this question. And I can click on those and it will learn from that and adjust the confidence accordingly. So in this case, it's obviously given the right answer, so I don't want to teach it anything. But now that I've given it context on who is the best pony, and it's obviously come back with Lunar again. So who is the best pony? Because I added the phrasing on that as an alternate phrasing for best pony, you can see the question is now who is the best pony, and it gave a confidence score of 99% because yes, of course, Lunar is the best pony. All right, Cario, thank you for your feedback. It was considered one client brain hole to be blown in the future. Cool. I love showing you stuff that you can do with technology. Realistically, I'm a massive nerd, and I love doing weird and wonderful things. I love it when my kids do weird and wonderful things with technology and show us all that sort of stuff. I really do hope you enjoyed this session and it made a lot of sense to you. Again, if you need any information on how to do this, I have it over on my blog. So if you head to UcMadScientist.com and search for bot, you'll find a full how-to building a Teams bot using Azure Cognitive Services, and all the information's there with screenshots. Go and have a play. That totally wasn't a Google screenshot on the screen. Have a play, full step-by-step, follow along. In fact, I was following along another window off the side just so I can remember the exact steps. So I hope this has been informative, and if anybody has any last questions, we're just about to hit time now. Throw them in and Daryl will do his best to help out. But otherwise, thank you for attending. Daryl, thanks for hanging around. You've been awesome. And we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks for that awesome session, James. It was great interaction too from those who were brave enough to drop their questions in the chat. Very practical way of being able to give people information rather than sending them to sometimes quite complex intranets where supposedly the answer's supposed to be. So thanks, James, for giving us some tips about how to make that easier to interact with in Teams. Yeah, there's our sponsors. There hasn't been any other questions, just a couple of, thanks for playing, thanks for presenting. So yeah, do check out the other sessions. That's m365may.com/sessions, and jump ahead too for the rest of the week as we see some other great sessions to attend. Drop them into your calendars, and If you don't manage to come along to them, you can find them as recordings a bit later on the Regarding 365 YouTube channel. Thanks again, James, and thanks
Cool.
everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.